Hi, welcome back to Chemistry in Action. During our last episode, we discussed the subject of mixtures. Today, we will learn about substances we usually encounter in our daily lives. Let's focus on elements and compounds. How important are they to us? How do we distinguish between them? Let's also try to find out how to classify elements and compounds. But before we compound our worries on how to classify substances, let's have a short break. Look around you right now. Can you classify the different forms of matter that you see? Scientists have searched for ways to classify and categorize the things they study. This has led to the classification of matter according to pure substances and mixtures. In the past episode, we saw that mixtures are physical combinations of two or more substances. We also saw how these mixtures can be separated by filtration, extraction, and distillation. If substances form parts of mixtures, this means that they are simpler than mixtures. But what are substances? To make things clearer, let's have Mildred Tamor do a simple experiment with pure water. Can pure water be broken down into different kinds of matter mechanically, say by filtration, extraction, or distillation? Examine the filter. Is there any sediment left? Nothing. Let's then see what happens if we distill another sample of pure water. We use a distilling apparatus. The water boils at a sharp and exact temperature. After all the water has been boiled off, nothing remains. With this experiment, we can see more clearly that pure water is only one substance. It is homogeneous. That is, it is the same kind of matter and has the same properties or distinguishing features throughout the sample. Water is a substance. But can water still be broken down further? Let's ask Mildred to perform another experiment. An electric current is passed through water to which sodium hydroxide has been added. This process is called electrolysis. In this experiment, water has been transformed into two products, hydrogen and oxygen. Unlike the case of mixtures, it needed a chemical process or change to break water down into its components, hydrogen and oxygen. Our question now is, can hydrogen and oxygen be further broken down like water by a chemical change? The answer is no, not by any chemical means. This brings us now to a further grouping of matter. Water is a substance that can be broken down chemically. It is a compound. Hydrogen and oxygen are also substances, but they cannot be broken down chemically to form other substances. They are elements. Let's try to tell an element from a compound in another way. Mildred takes a pinch of sulfur and places it in a test tube. As she heats the test tube, the sulfur begins to melt and then turns into yellow vapor. If you look closely, a yellow solid is condensed at the upper portion of the test tube. It is the same color, appearance, and odor as the sulfur before heating. It has not been chemically affected by heat. It has merely undergone a phase change. Now let's see what happens to another kind of sample, say the sugar. If you do this experiment yourself, you will smell a sweet odor coming from the melting sugar. As we continue to apply heat, its color changes. A black residue forms at the bottom of the test tube. At the upper portion, a yellowish liquid appears. Is the black residue still sugar? If we taste it, we find it is no longer sweet. In fact, it tastes quite bitter. This black stuff is no longer sugar, but is now carbon, an element or a substance that cannot be broken down chemically. This yellowish liquid is basically water, which is, as we saw earlier, a compound. Remember that a compound is a substance that can be further broken down chemically. This liquid is yellowish because it is contaminated. Earlier, we saw sulfur undergo a phase change. It did not change into another substance. Its properties remain the same even after heating. If we conducted this experiment, making sure that no sulfur gas escaped, we would find no change in the mass of sulfur. Sulfur cannot be broken down into simpler substances. It is an element. On the other hand, sugar is a compound which can be broken down into simpler substances. Upon heating, it decomposes into carbon and water. What remains in the test tube has a smaller mass than the original sugar sample because some water has escaped as water vapor. It is not always this simple to differentiate between an element and a compound. We do not always get conclusive answers simply by heating. To be certain about our findings, we should conduct other tests. Centuries ago, scientists used heat to differentiate elements from compounds. They concluded that elements do not change into other substances by mere heating.